When 16-year-old Pauline Parker hit her mother, Honorah, in the head with a brick tied in a stocking, she expected her to die instantly. In Pauline's favorite films, people died like that all the time. Just one hit to the head or a swift lunge with a sword, and they would drop lifeless. Her friend, 15-year-old Juliet Hume, mistakenly thought that too, as she witnessed the horrible scene unfold before her. Because Pauline's mother wasn't dead, not yet. Instead, the 45-year-old mother of three fell forward, assumably disoriented and confused from this attack, and not just from the blow to her head. What could she have thought after feeling that first hit? I can only imagine the confusing and fearful thoughts racing through Honorah's mind, knowing that her daughter is the one who hit her. She must have been so stunned and shocked, but unable to do anything. Because despite their high intelligence, something even the prosecution acknowledged, Pauline and Juliet failed to grasp the stark difference between fiction and reality. Their understanding of death was, and still viewed as, disturbingly naive to many, influenced and shaped by their cinematic fantasies than the brutal consequences of real violence. As medical and science fields progressed, we've learned that teenager brains don't work the same as adults. Our frontal lobes, which help us make decisions, haven't fully developed until around 25 or 26. Today, we're still battling society's expectations of what a perfect or normal child even is. In the previous generations, though the message was obvious, you did what you were told. You were to speak when spoken to, and you never interrupt adults. But this didn't just mean for kids to behave, stop yelling, or stop playing ball in the house. I mean, that too. But it also meant that what children, including teenagers, had to say wasn't viewed as important to adults. Juliet and Pauline were young toddlers during the Second World War. Their childhood was impacted differently than those in the US and New Zealand to an extent. Everyone shared the fear of war, rationing, the air raid drills, which would alter the generations growing up at this time. But for Juliet, who lived in London, it was a literal nightmare. During the Blitzkrieg in World War II, Juliet and her mother were caught in a bombing in London. For 8 months, Germans bombed the city continuously. Juliet, only 2 years old at this time, was hit by a blast as her mother called for her to run to the bomb shelter. Juliet experienced years of severe night terrors, insomnia, bouts of crying and screaming. Eventually, she was diagnosed with PTSD and bomb shock. Her mother would complain about Juliet's behavior as she got a little older, calling it clingy. Doctors and her parents were all in agreement that this child was a crying mess, especially when it came to Juliet's mother, Hilda. Juliet would get upset and throw, quote, tantrums when her mother would leave for any period of time. But instead of being concerned, these behaviors were viewed as the child's fault, and they should be taught how to calm down and behave themselves. Juliet's PTSD and this event in her life are ignored time and time again by people who've covered this story. And it's only talked about because it happens to be part of Juliet's timeline. Her mother, Hilda, was described as not being the greatest parent and more annoyed by having to care for them. But at this time in history, kids were expected of you as a woman. Girls were taught young that their only true goal in life was to find a man, marry him, and have children, a traditional rule locked in by strict gender roles and expectations. Birth control usage was becoming more normalized, but most of those choosing to use it were still demonized and looked down on. A woman who didn't wish to become a mother was considered not much of a woman at all. But the growing generation of kids at this time began feeling different about the roles forced on them. They became a new fear unlocked for adults, kids who didn't listen and had their own opinions. So as kids grew into teen, governing adults felt there was a need to instruct them on how to teen the correct way. The 50s gave us mental health films, instructional videos to be played on the old boob tube. Narrated by a properly spoken man, he goes through step by step on how young ladies and young men should act, dress, care for their hygiene, and social requirements. We were expected to jump from baby to adolescent to adult. Yes, a young teen should understand that murder is obviously wrong, and once somebody is dead, they're gone forever. But the actual finality of it may not have registered the way it does in an adult. Pauline and Juliet looked at each other. And in this moment, a 15-year-old Juliet had to decide if she was going to stay and help her friend or run for her own life. Juliet Hume took the handmade weapon from her friend and swung. She took turns with Pauline, holding Honorah down and hitting her in the head. Putting the brick in the stocking was a late-minute switch from a rock. Was Pauline hoping to create some sort of physical distance from Honorah and, in a way, distancing herself from the attack? Maybe she or both girls figured they could swing it from further away, especially if they believed one hit to Honorah's head would be enough to kill her. But that changed when the brick tore through the stocking. This gave the teens the only choice they seemed to have, which was using the broken brick by itself. It's clear to see how the two of them thought how easy this murder plan would be, mainly since it was physically difficult for Juliet and Pauline to do anything strenuous. Both girls got tired easily from everyday things due to their childhood illnesses. They had been excused from their gym classes and told them to refrain from physical activities besides horseback riding and bicycling. In addition to this, the girls' overall frailness, Honorah was described as a larger, curvier, buxom woman. From the time they began the attack until Honorah stopped moving, it took less than 30 minutes. And once Pauline swung the first hit and her mother didn't just die instantly, they felt they had no choice but to keep going. They had to rely on their adrenaline to get them through this. What would they even say if they stopped and got help? What would Honorah say or do knowing her daughter tried to kill her? For those who know of this case and have seen Heavenly Creatures, the picture given of Juliet and Pauline might be more sympathetic, but obviously not incredibly positive. I mean, understandably, why would it be? So it's even more difficult to explain to people that, yes, Honorah was a victim of a senseless, horrible, violent murder. But in life, she was the physically, verbally abusive one, especially to her daughter Pauline. During the 1954 murder trial of Juliet and Pauline, Juliet's mother, Hilda, testified that she knew of Honorah's, quote, corporal punishment. When spending time with Juliet, Pauline also spent a good amount of time with the Humes. She was treated and welcomed as a part of the family. Hilda, Juliet's mother, went as far as calling Pauline her foster daughter. Hilda and Henry Hume were not fantastic parents either, and certainly not winning any awards or getting macaroni jewelry from their kids. But it was nothing compared to what Pauline experienced at the Rieper family home and boarding house. A fellow classmate was interviewed for Peter Graham's nonfiction book, Anne Perry and the Crime of the Century. And during one of the interviews of the former classmates, she remembered going to Pauline's house for a play date. She recalled how dreary and unwelcoming and unhomey it felt. The boarding home was always bustling, people in and out every day. In her diary, Pauline often talks about how much she hated being home, except on the rare occasion when she was all alone. Juliet would later state helping her friend was a matter of life or death. She knew that one of them had to die. She emphasized if she didn't help her friend Pauline, Pauline would die. What if Juliet had been right? What if she had never helped Pauline and Honorah had lived? What scenario in her mind would make Juliet say that? Take away calling police for a moment. We obviously are expecting a severe punishment, and recourse of some kind is absolutely in order. We can't have angry teens attacking their parents. Their stinging sharp wit is enough to cut a grown adult down to a blubbery mess. But what could be so frightening that both girls decided to keep going because the alternative was worse? Either way, she repeated the same thing to authorities in 1954 and interviews later in life. One of them had to die, and she just wanted to help Pauline. Anne went on to say that she had to honor her word and promise to her friend. Her explanation was that Pauline had been there for her in a difficult time when Juliet really needed someone, and therefore promised she would be there for Pauline no matter what. Next time on Ink Noir Podcast, more about heavenly creatures and the real story of Anne Perry and Pauline Parker.